He's endowed with ever-fresh love of Godhead. His radiant luster is like the color of fresh butter. His fresh attire is arranged in ever-new fashions. He relishes ever-new mellows of love for Krishna. He shines in ninefold new ways while executing the ninefold processes of devotion. He is permeated with a most auspicious loving nature. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi. He is absorbed in devotion to Sri Hari. He maintains the chanting of the names of Hari. While chanting, he counts the holy names on the fingers of his hands. He's addicted to the name of Hari. He always has tears of love welling in his eyes. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi. He's always removing the suffering of material existence for mankind. He's the goal of life for persons who are dedicated to their supreme interests. He inspires men and women to become the honeybees, eager for the honey of Krishna's reign. He removes the burning fever of material world. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi. He motivates pure devotion unto himself. He is the most attractive to his beloved servitors. By his dramatic dancing, he exhibits the characteristics of the king of paramours. He causes the minds of beautiful young village women to dance. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi. He plays kartals as his throat emanates. Sweet melodious sounds and the vibrant notes of the veena are played softly. He thus inspires the devotees to perform dramatic dancing that is infused with aspects of his own devotional service. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi. He is accompanied by the Sankirtan movement, which is the religious practice for the age of Kali. He is the son of Nanda Maharaj, come again. He is the extraordinarily brilliant ornament of the earth. His preaching mood is suitably adapted to the cycle of birth and death, and his consciousness is fixed in meditation on his own form of Krishna. He is always accompanied by his transcendental abode. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi. His eyes, the soles of his feet, his clothing are reddish like the color that heralds the rising sun. As he utters his own names, his voice alters. He awakens a sweet flavor to life throughout the universe. I bow down to Goda, the beautiful son of Mother Sakshi.
I just also want to announce that Vrindavan's daughter is making her kirtan debut on the back of tambourine. So you can give her a big Hari Bol for the laundry. Hari Bol. She's going to be keeping the beat for all of us.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for being here at a very, very special Bhagavat sravanam today. Our very, very dear Rasanath Das will be speaking to us on the glories of Lord Chaitanya during this 3-day festival for Gaur Purnima, which is tomorrow. So we can meditate on the Lord leading up to Gaur Purnima. I want to just briefly introduce Rasanath. I'm sure most of us know his glories, but I was just looking at his profile on Upbuild, and he has a bachelor's in engineering from IIT in India, very prestigious university, and an MBA from Cornell. And then he actually worked on Wall Street, which, if any of you all know, is a very intense place for Bank of America from 2006 to 2008. And then he actually joined the ashram here at Bhakti Center and lived as a brahmachari, a monk, for 4 years. And then during that time, him and his best friend Hari Prasad also started what they now do, which is their business called Upbuild, which is a company focused on building cultures of trust in organizations. And it's so beautiful. They use the principles of Bhagavat Gita to coach people in organizations and also individually. And through their work, which is inspiring so many, they actually share Krishna consciousness in a very, very relevant way with young professionals in New York City. And then they also coach many devotees as well in Bhagavad Gita and the Enneagram. so that we can better understand our false ego, which will help our practice of Krishna consciousness. And he's helped myself, both him and his wife have helped myself and many, many others in our practice of bhakti. He's very, 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 very deep, deep, deep devotee. He's so knowledgeable in Shastra, so we're so happy to have you here with us, Guru, and to speak on Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, please wisdom.
Just when you come hold this, I'm going to share.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Om Shivaya Krishna Prasthaya Shri Vedanta Swami Devi Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Kutare Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Alright. It's nice to see so many familiar faces who come up to support. I need the support. And my hope is for all of us to engage in a conversation around this topic of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are so many verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that are endless. We can discuss and spend hours just diving really deep into it. I chose one verse because of perhaps a recency effect. I was reading this chapter and this verse just stood out for me. My hope is that to use this verse as a starting point for a conversation. And so I would need your participation. And through that, then we really churn this together. That's the idea. That's the word. Hopefully carry that to tomorrow and for the rest of our lives. Okay. So the verse that I chose is from the Antya Lila. Anyone new here? Who's here for the first time? Welcome. What's your name?
I'm Devashish.
Devashish. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Have you been to Miswan Temple or Kuttur? Okay. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. This is our Bhagavat program, and in this program we go deep into our study of bhakti. And today is special. We are studying the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose birthday or appearance day is tomorrow. So we are preparing ourselves to welcome him with our hearts. Thank you. So this particular verse comes in the Antya Lila, which is the third section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, written by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And the context of this verse is Srila Sanatana Goswami glorifying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in chapter 4. And this chapter is a very, to me, when we understand this chapter very deeply, we actually understand the essence of bhakti. And the subtleties. And this is what we are really going to spend time discussing, is the subtle heart of bhakti. And the subtleties that come in the exchange
are so incredibly beautiful. And this verse also talks about the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we'll unpack a particular word that Sanatana Goswami uses to glorify Mahaprabhu. So the verse, I'll read it in Bengali, and then we'll read the translation. So, Tabe Sanatana kahe tomake namaskare tomara gambira hridaye ke bujite pare. Verse number is, thank you, 484. Antilila, chapter 4, text 84. Tave sanatana kahe tomake namaskare tomara gambira hridaya ke bujite pare. At that time, Sanatana Goswami said to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. No one can understand the deep ideas you plan within your heart. And the word here is, see, he glorifies Mahaprabhu's heart. He says, Tomara Gambira Hridaya. And this word Gambira Hridaya is repeated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in many places. Incidentally, the place that Mahaprabhu stayed in Jagannath Puri was also called the Gambira. And the Gambira is a reflection of Mahaprabhu's heart. Right? The reason why the place is called Gambira is because it was. Anyone has visited the place? What was your experience of being there?
Amazing. It was amazing. It was one of my favorite places.
Why?
It's just everything felt so different. Like you're transformed or transported, I should say.
Transported.
Yeah, and then the kirtan was just out of this world.
Okay.
Completely out of this world. But just the whole essence of the place.
Yeah, beautiful. Anyone else? Any experience? If you've been, what is it? Yes.
That's where Mahaprabhu had his deepest pastimes and ecstatic love for Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And when you go there, the room is actually so small that the devotees I were with were actually in pain. Like, how could Mahaprabhu be in such a small and austere room? But the energy of Mahaprabhu's presence was so intense that you literally just wanted to stay there forever and never leave. It makes you want to just sit and chant.
Beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else who's been to the Gambira?
Krishna.
Who?
She raised her hand.
Krishna? Did you raise your hand? Yes.
Yeah, there was some sense of calm there.
Calm, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The place that we usually get to see is actually, it's remodeled in the sense that the actual Gambira is underneath. And it's like a tunnel. It's like a small, very, very small place. But when you go there, you, as you said, transported. There's something, your heart just flings your heart open. That was my experience when I went there. It was just, I couldn't explain it. Just tears just, came down my eyes. And it was just, it was unexplained. And the reason why I felt that being in the Gambira was so special is because, again, it's a direct reflection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart. And when Sanatana Goswami glorifies Mahaprabhu as Tomara Gambira Hridaya, the idea of Gambira, what's the translation of Gambira? Serious, grave. You can one, grave. Yes. What else? Depth. Okay. Beautiful. Anything else? Intense. Right. Beautiful. What else? Sensitive. This is where we will focus. The heart is just so soft, tender, sensitive, deep. And the depth, gravity, movement, they're all characteristics of a sensitive heart. And when we use the word sensitivity, in the context of the modern day, sometimes sensitivity is a pejorative term. Stop being so sensitive. Right? Or we use the word sensitivity to mean weak. But in the context of the material world, our egos are fragile. And in that sense of the term, on one end of the spectrum, because our egos are so fragile, anything that happens to us, the tendency of the ego is to take offenses very easily. Something happens and we feel offended. And sometimes we confuse that to mean that we are sensitive, and there's some sensitivity there, but that is actually the fragility of the ego. Right? Ego is so fragile that when it doesn't get hurt once, it even remotely it feels offended. And so when we use the term sensitive, it's so important to understand. And when we do the context of Bhagavat, we will actually talk about this more deeply. It is not meaning the fragility of the ego. Right? As we experience in our material context, when we feel down or when we feel offended. And the way we respond to those offenses in the material world is, on one end of the spectrum, we are very reactive. Anything that somebody says can be considered offensive, right? I was just talking to one of my clients, she's a doctor, and she was saying how she was treating this 20-year-old patient, and she said it's her practice that when she prescribes medication, she writes in capital letters certain specific instructions about like how to take the medication so that they don't miss it. And the next day, she was saying how in the doctor's office they got a call from the patient's mother saying that how she didn't consider the doctor to be kind because she felt that the doctor had yelled at the patient because she wrote in capital letters. And it became a big issue. It's just an example of how sometimes, many times, even with good intentions on the other side, fragile ego is susceptible to being misunderstood, and misunderstandings happen at the drop of a dime. Right? And we tend to term that as sensitivity. That's just fragility. And on the other, the way we cope with fragility, either we react. In the middle, we become passive aggressive. And then the other side of it is we just become passive, just shut down our hearts. And that's an easy way to cope. But what Gambhira Hridaya actually means, you see when you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. How does Prabhupada translate Chaitanya Charitamrita? It's a phenomenal translation. Character of the immortal life force, the character of life force and immortality. It's Prabhupada's translation. Chaitanya is immortal. Charita is character. Amrita is the pastimes, the nectar. The nectar of the character of the life force and immortality. And when we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when we understand, when we make an attempt to understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart, what comes forth is the idea of sensitivity, because bhakti is the expression of the heart. And when you really study the true characteristics of bhakti, it is characterized by sensitivity. I was good to see my wife. She introduced me to listening to Swami Bhagavat Keshav Maharaj's classes recently. One of his classes in the 6 Goswamis, he was talking about how offenses are the result of the absence of sensitivity. So offense is a result of the fragility of the ego. And on the flip side, there's the absence of sensitivity. Because our hearts are shut down. And from that place, it's very easy to commit offenses. And when you truly understand the sensitive heart, it's so deep and so subtle that it has the capacity to hold multiple levels of truth and be able to respond very specifically as it pleases Krishna according to time, place, and circumstance. And the idea of Gambhira Hridaya, it is so deep, and this is Sachinandana Swami speaks about this very beautifully. He says that there are three levels of the heart. He says the physical heart is the first level, and then he talks about the emotional heart, and he says the deepest part of the heart is the spiritual heart, right? And the nature of the spiritual heart is it's sensitive. Otherwise, how can one express bhakti? Right? How can one experience bhakti and how can one express bhakti? And so one of the things that I'm personally experiencing, both within and outside of the society of devotees, is because we have become a desensitized culture. Right? And so it is very hard to experience bhakti when we are desensitized. Possible. There may be some semblance, but true bhakti doesn't express itself. So Mahaprabhu's heart is a very sensitive heart. And what I would like to focus on today is the various expressions of that sensitivity in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it is strewn with that expression of sensitivity. It's so refined, so beautiful, that it has the capacity to experience, perceive multiple levels of truth and respond in a way that is fully pleasing to Krishna according to time, place, and circumstance. So we see how in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu, and this is the transformation that Mahaprabhu experiences in this first, the initial Adi Lila. If we were to, for the time being, look at one aspect of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, which is we step away from a little bit thinking about Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but think about him as a devotee. The first part of his early life was in Navadvip, where Mahaprabhu grew up as a scholar. Right? And when you read that side of Mahaprabhu's life, what do you find him to be? Arrogant. That's the word that comes to mind, arrogant. Right? And his dealings are, he's a logician. And he took a lot of happiness in defeating, which later on in his life you'll see that the same thing, which is his expertise in logic and reason and his incredible scholastic capacity is engaged. And you see, after Mahaprabhu takes sannyas, right, the first person who he transformed was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was Bhajan he sang. There was no bigger scholar that existed at that time than Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. But the way Mahaprabhu defeated him, right? Logic was in place, same thing. But what was so different about that was the sensitivity of the Chitta. So you see the shift that happens, and this is the amazing beauty that you observe, that after Mahaprabhu met Ishwarapuri, people find him transformed. And what transformed him was, he became this really sensitive person. Right? He used to, the same people used to run away seeing him. What happened? And there's a story where Srivas Pandit cannot believe this. He stands outside of the house of, I think it was, getting this episode from Gautam Mahaprabhu. When he hears the story, what has happened to Mahaprabhu, he stands outside to really, is this true? But the thing is, what he finds is that Mahaprabhu's heart has changed significantly. It's become sensitive, deeply experiencing Krishna's mercy. So you see the shift that happens in Mahaprabhu's life. One of the primary characteristics of that is this idea of Gambhira Hridaya, this really sensitive, delicate heart. Right? And in his post-transformed period, you can break it up into three parts. Where Mahaprabhu, the first part is Mahaprabhu experienced Krishna's love, right, in the house of Srivas Thakur. And we see how Mahaprabhu expressed his sensitivity in that part. And then, after Mahaprabhu took sannyas, where his sensitivity was expressed in two ways. In the way he gave Krishna consciousness to people, and the way he dealt with the devotees. And then, again, towards the end of his life, you can see how, again, Mahaprabhu's sensitivity in terms of how he experienced Krishna Prem in the depths of the Gambhira. So, what I would love for us to do is to reflect, take a couple of minutes, if you have read the Chaitanya Charitamrita or heard about the Pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to reflect on these three parts of his post-transformed life, after he becomes a devotee. And to think about what episodes of sensitivity can you, as you've read or as you've heard, what particular episodes of sensitivity and sensitive behavior and sensitive feelings do you remember? And why that has struck you. So take a couple of minutes and you think about, sometimes there are numerous pastimes that may come to your mind, that which is totally fine. But think about one of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where you experience the depth and the sensitivity of his heart. So I would love for some of you to share what comes to your mind. Jump ahead.
What immediately came to my mind was the Lord's sensitivity in two cases. He wanted to, after he took sannyas, go to Vrindavan. But he went home to see his mother before going to Vrindavan. And his mother implored him to please not go to Vrindavan because she would never see him again, but to instead reside at Jagannath Puri. Because if he resided at Jagannath Puri, which is non-different from Vrindavan, then she would be able to hear of his activities. And due to the sensitivity of his love for his mother and her feelings, he agreed. And then he still wanted to go to Vrindavan, because Vrindavan was his heart. And he asked the devotees their permission, their blessings before going to Vrindavan. And the devotees kept saying, you can go, but after this festival, or after this festival, or after this festival. So he didn't go right away, because he was teaching us that we can't do anything without pleasing the devotees and receiving the blessings of the devotees. So he first wanted to receive the blessings from the devotees, and then even when he was going to travel to Vrindavan, so many devotees were going to come with him, but he was very aware that he wanted to enter into Vrindavan in the proper mood and not create a big show. So he also went to Vrindavan just taking one servant with him.
Beautiful. The Pastimes of Mahaprabhu, sannyas is considered to be a very, it's renunciation. The beauty of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is that even the pastimes of renunciation actually melt the heart. And renunciation is considered to be this topic of like, renounced the material world. And when you see how the spirit of the renunciation, it's actually so touching. And Mahaprabhu's taking sannyas is him experiencing the suffering of the living entities. Right? So there is a difference in sannyas, that sannyas can come from dry renunciation. Sannyas can come from a place of bhakti. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, what you experience is that even the pastimes of renunciants and renunciation is sensitive in its nature. It's like it is coming from such the depth of the heart that when you read those pastimes, your heart doesn't shut down. Your heart just actually opens up even more. So Mahaprabhu takes sannyas. The cause of his taking sannyas, when he sees how he is misunderstood when he chants Gopi Gopi, and the person comes and says, "Why are you chanting the name of Gopi?" And he's Krishna. The recognition how far people are from understanding the true nature of Vrindavan. And that it impels him to actually take sannyas. And then the process of his taking sannyas, right? He reveals his heart. First Lord Nityananda, and then and Shiva's Kadava Pandit is stunned when he understands what Mahaprabhu is, but he doesn't share that with Mother Shachi. Right? So you see, sometimes you see how why wasn't I included? Why did Mahaprabhu share with certain people and said sensitivity? And then how he leaves home, the whole taking sannyas pastime, it's just really deeply touches the heart. And then post that, when the request that Mahaprabhu gets from his own mother. So one of the ways that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies Mahaprabhu. So every chapter in the Chaitanya Charitamrita begins with sort of a summary of the chapter, but glorifying the main protagonist in relationship with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So sometimes it's directly Mahaprabhu, sometimes it's a particular devotee. And in the Altilila, one of the chapters opens with Mahaprabhu with Kaviraj Goswami glorifying Mahaprabhu as Matru Bhakta Shiromani. One who is the topmost of the devotees of one's mother. And so how do you understand that for a person who is renounced? So the idea, through his own taking sannyas, Mahaprabhu reveals how sannyas is not an insensitive act, but it is the act of greatest sensitivity. In the way he does it. And unfortunately, I would say, in our society many times, when we talk or think about renunciation, or sometimes even do it, or expect others to do it, it is done from a very insensitive place, which actually forces the shutting down of the heart. So it may look like renunciation, but the heart is just shutting down. So thank you. Any other pastimes of where one can experience Mahaprabhu's sensitivity? Yes, it's a question.
It's a pastime of Kurma Vikas,
Ah,
where he wants to travel. He wants to travel with Sri Chaitanya, but Sri Chaitanya says, never say that. Stay at home,
yes.
tell people chant Hare Krishna, etc. So, very compassionate.
So, such a beautiful, when you read again, when you read the pastime, the heart is just so deeply, fling your heart. It's Mahaprabhu goes to South India and he meets the Kurma Brahmin, Kurma Kshetra, and spends significant time with him. And after that, the Kurma Brahmin just wants to leave his home again. Renunciation. Wants to leave his home, just travel with Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu gives him beautiful. That's the famous instruction. Tare kaho Krishna Pradesh. Amar Agya Guru Bharatari Yesh. And before that, the verse that comes before that is also a very significant verse. Can someone look up Marco? Can you look at the verse before that verse? I think it comes in chapter 7 of Madhya. The delicateness with which Mahaprabhu actually addresses his heart, and the way he instructs Kurma Brahman to stay at home, and then he says, through that you will actually experience me. And so we are never separated. Thank you. That's very true. I want to hear from you. Why do you find that particularly sensitive?
Especially in that climate, at that time, leaving the family and going off to the forest is a respected thing. Mahaprabhu is telling him, don't think like that. He's in very strong language. He says, don't think like that. You stay home, you chant, tell people about Krishna. That's what's required. Even today, we have people who like to travel with sannyasis and leave their family and such. That's anyway.
The verse before that is Madhya Lila 7:127. So the translation is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Don't speak again like that. Better to remain at home and chant the holy name of Krishna always."
The Bengali is
Prabhu kahe achhe baat kaho nai kahibe grihe rahi Krishna naam
Nirantara. That's right. Nirantara, the word Nirantara. Grihe rahe Krishna naam Nirantara. What's that? Lahiba?
Laiba.
Laiba, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it says stay at home constantly, Nirantara. So two things he gives in instructions. Always chant the names of Krishna and Jaladeka Tarika, Krishna Krishna. Amarya Gya Guru Tari. Like these two things. We will never be separated. And beautiful. Any more? Sensitivity of love. Yes, Mangalas.
Is it okay if I read one?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Here it is. One of the maidservants of Srivas Pandit named Dukhi would carry all the Ganga water for the Lord's bath while the Lord was still engaged in dancing. She would watch the beautiful form of the Lord, and tears would come out in drops. He was very pleased, the Lord, and he inquired from Srivas Pandit, "Who brings that water daily?" Srivas Pandit replied, "Dukhi, the maidservant, brings them." The Lord said, "Then you should name her Sukhi, or happy, instead of Dukhi, which means sad. The name Dukhi is not fitting to her." This is from Chaitanya Bhagavat.
Yes, that's right.
I think Sukhi is the most appropriate name for her. The devotees were moved to tears seeing the unlimited mercy of the Lord upon the poor maidservant, and they began to call her now as Sukhi. And Srivas Pandit now stopped seeing her and treating her as a maidservant.
Please. Why? Why do you find this so compelling to the heart?
It's sometimes a service that she's doing that can be sort of invisible, particularly if she's doing it well. The Lord saw her, and he saw her through eyes of love that lifted her up into an identity that became sacred and joyful. And just by his vision, the devotees, others began to see her in that way also. So that transformation can happen at those times and in those services and with those actions that nobody sees
Yes.
or nobody knows, but the Lord knows.
Yeah.
And through His vision and through His love, our identity, our perception of ourselves, and the way in which others perceive us can shift
So
completely.
beautifully explained. Thank you. It's such a, again, brings tears to my eyes because this is the time when Mahaprabhu was performing his pastimes. Every night they used to gather at the house of Srivas Thakur and have kirtan. Mahaprabhu was very sensitive to the environment. You see that? How sensitive he was to the environment. I'm not feeling the same ecstasy today. Why? Right? See, that's the sign of a sensitive. It's a very deeply sensitive heart. Now, when a fragile person experiences that, a fragile person may experience that, see how it works. We talked about fragility earlier on, the fragility of the ego. Right? Somebody who's fragile may experience that same thing and say, oh, this is exclusive. Right? Well, this is just creating a space where like others are not allowed. And some people during that time felt it. And they became entitled and they demanded, like, we have to be let into this kirtan. But a sensitive heart, Mahaprabhu's Gambhira, like deep heart, like wouldn't, like I won't experience Krishna the same way. Right? And he didn't let the milk drinking, he didn't want the milk drinking Brahman to come inside. Like the renunciation, right? Well, like, do you think you can experience this? Do you think your ticket to bhakti is through renunciation? No. And at the same time, contrast, the same time, a maidservant in the house of Srivas Thakur. And her service was just to bring water. And Mahaprabhu could taste the bhakti in her service. So, Saragrahi, to understand the Sara of the heart requires sensitivity. This is a very gross, extreme example. I request forgiveness from the deities share this example, but it's a very early example. You know, some people who do wine tasting are paid so much money because they have to keep their sense buds, their taste buds, very sensitive. Because only then can you understand the taste of something. Like people have a career in this, like food tasting, wine tasting, and Mahaprabhu again requires a very sensitive palate. And Mahaprabhu's heart is so sensitive, so thick, so deep that you can experience what is bhakti from what is not bhakti, and it's very subtle at that point. And that subtlety, again, to distinguish something that may externally look like advancement. Another pastime that comes to mind is the pastime of Ramdas Vishwas in the Antya-lila, who meets Raghunath Bhatta on his journey to Puri. And he's always chanting the names of Ram. And then Raghunath Bhatta Goswami is taken by this person. I don't know what you mentioned. The Mahaprabhu was taken by, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami is really taken by this person who was chanting the name. And Ramdas Vishwas offers to carry Raghunath Bhatta Goswami's luggage. And Raghunath Bhatta is very deeply touched. And then they come to Puri and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami introduces he very deeply embraces Mahaprabhu deeply, very from his heart embraces Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. And then Raghunath Bhatta Goswami introduces Ramdas Vishwas. Mahaprabhu just ignores him. And because Mahaprabhu understood that his heart was actually very strongly tinged with impersonalism. And that it was, he was chanting the names of Ram so that he could become Ram one day. And to be able to discern at that level. It requires a sensitive heart. Any other question? Yes.
Just gonna read a few verses.
Yes, please.
It's from the
This is also from the Antilila, chapter 14, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri. So he's a sannyasi at this time. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his customary daily duties, and at the usual time, he went to see Lord Jagannath in the temple. As he viewed Lord Jagannath from behind the Garuda column, hundreds and thousands of people in front of him were seeing the deity. Suddenly, a woman from Orissa, unable to see Lord Jagannath because of the crowd, climbed the column of Garuda, placing her foot on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shoulder. When he saw this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant, Govinda, hastily got her down from her position. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, chastised him for this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Govinda, "O Adivasya," translated uncivilized man, "do not forbid this woman to climb the Garuda Stampa. Let her see Lord Jagannath to her satisfaction." When the woman came to her senses, however, she quickly climbed back down to the ground, and seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, immediately begged at his lotus feet for forgiveness. Seeing the woman's eagerness, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Lord Jagannath has not bestowed so much eagerness upon me. She has fully absorbed her body, mind, and life in Lord Jagannath. Therefore, she was unaware that she was putting her foot on my shoulder. Alas, how fortunate this woman is. I pray at her feet that she favor me with great eagerness to see Lord Jagannath."
So, please.
You have more ICQs in your eyes too.
I wanted to just read it and hear from you. But if you want me to say something, I just think it's you were saying earlier, somebody was quoting recently one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, Sridhar Maharaj, was talking about bhakti as a lawless love. And that this idea of just throwing ourselves at Krishna. And I think the sensitivity to recognize how each and every one of us, just the evidence of sitting in this room, and so many who aren't sitting in this room in so many places, are making this effort to throw ourselves at Krishna in some way, shape, or form. And it may look ugly at times, we may stumble towards Krishna at times, but I think Mahaprabhu is seeing the essence of what Vaisheshwar quotes often, that fanning the spark, that Srila Prabhupada was also so adept at. And so being able to see actually like what is the essence. Everything else kind of washes away with time. Whatever karma or mistakes or Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in 9:26 mentions one offers me with love or devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. It's kind of very specific. And in the very next verse, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, just do it for me. And it's just kind of that sense of just recognizing that when we're coming towards Krishna, everything else becomes superfluous. And that devotion, Krishna just kind of hones it in as a tractor beam, and he notices that. And so I think, for all of us, and it's so easy there's no report card in bhakti, in a way. We have these rules and regulations and these standards and all of these things, but that's not what we're judged upon, and so, there's just the element of our sincerity and Mahaprabhu noticing that, and that your devotional life can look so perfect and beautiful on the outside, but just like Ramdas Vishwas you mentioned, it can be devoid of bhakti in the heart, and that's not pleasing to Mahaprabhu, but then it could just be so, and I think there's also the flip side of it where we just say, okay, well, it doesn't really matter because I have bhakti. And it's like, okay, well then, maybe you don't have as much bhakti as you're saying maybe you're using it as an excuse to just kind of do whatever, not follow the standards. I'm late for the RT, or, I didn't dress the deity so well, but I was with bhakti, and so, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We have standards.
Yeah.
Because it's a way of expression of bhakti. But I just appreciate that sensitivity. He took sannyas, So he's a sannyasi, he was a very strict sannyasi, but at the same time, he had sensitivity.
So beautiful, so beautiful.
Right? The idea that contradictions only are reconciled in a deep heart. When we see in Mahaprabhu's life, like the sannyasi, so strict, so strict. It's like, you know, and when you see God if I, you know, we talk about polarity management. I've spoken about this before. Right? This is like Krishna actually working on both sides. Mahaprabhu is strict. So the conservative and the liberal work together. And it's beautiful. Like they strategize together. Like they have worked together. So beautiful. This is bhakti. Bhakti is not say I'm a conservative. In the material world, what happens is it becomes the material identity. I'm a conservative and I'm a liberal. It's just like, but in the spiritual world, it's a rasa. Right? There is a flavor to it, and both are expressions of incredible devotion. And the entire 13th chapter of the Lila is Srila Goswami and Mahaprabhu is discussing conservative and liberal expressions of love in the spiritual world.
Well, there was, before I thought of that pastime of the lady climbing on Mahaprabhu's shoulder, I was thinking it was other sensitivity, and you brought it up. I thought it parallels very well as I was thinking of the pastime of Jagai Madai. Because Mahaprabhu adjusted his approach that when Jagai had struck Nityananda Prabhu on the head and assaulted him, and Mahaprabhu was ready to take up his chakra and defend and kill Jagai. That was his, I'm not holding back to protect my dear brother, my devotee, my friend. And Nityananda Prabhu interjected and said, no, like, actually we're meant to be compassionate. And Mahaprabhu wasn't just like, I'm the bigger God here, and you just have to, you know, I'm the Adi Purush, you know, you're the first expansion, like, I'm barreling forward. But it was just the sensitivity of like, oh, I'm here to protect you, this is what you're asking of me, let me listen. And he changed his response, that sensitivity. So it's that you were talking about the conservatives.
So beautiful. Yeah, it's then
You really understand how Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu are working together. It's just, it's genius. And so when we look at the three parts of Mahaprabhu's life, you know, when he was tasting bhakti, the beginning, in Sri Rasanath, and at the end, when he was tasting bhakti in the middle part, where Mahaprabhu was traveling and giving Krishna consciousness, and then also conducted so many events, so many Vaishnavas, you will see maximum amount of sensitivity is required for preaching Krishna consciousness. Because, you know, the spiritual institution in the material world is the most confusing place. Most confusing place. It's like when hot water meets cold water, it's foggy. And the spiritual institution is the foggiest place you can ever experience. And what we see in Puri is, so Mahaprabhu takes sannyas as entry into a social institution. Remember that? Right? It's an ashram, it's an institution. When he goes to Puri, it's a temple, and Madhavananda Prabhu speaks extensively about this, right? Like, it's a temple, and the temple had rules. Haridas Thakur couldn't enter, Sanatana Goswami couldn't enter, right? And Mahaprabhu was so sensitive, he never changed the temple rules. Never. But every morning, after he saw Lord Jagannath, whose house did he come to? Haridas Thakur. So you see how these meetings are conducted in such a sensitive way. This is why Mahaprabhu never tried to throw out the regime at that time. Right? The Muslims were ruling like, you see, Mahaprabhu never took on, never, like, it was not social reform for social reform's sake. And in his course of his preaching, he actually met and had dialogues with many Muslims. But you see, those like this sensitivity with which they are conducted transform their hearts. Right? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that's the beginning, right? That's the first preaching that Mahaprabhu does. It's amazing. He just sat there for 7 days. He just sat there for 7 days, listening. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya goes through 6 stages in his transformation. Right? First, inward. Right? Then he tried to defeat. Then he tried to defend. And then he became silent. Hearing Mahaprabhu's arguments. And then he became shocked. It's like Chaitanya Charitamrita actually explains. Like there was like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya couldn't understand what was going on. He had never experienced anything like this before. Right? He explained this was the final straw that broke the camel's back. Right? The Alparama verse. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya explained it in 9 different ways, without touching his 9 explanations. Right? Mahaprabhu explains it in 60 ways. Each one and what happened is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya couldn't understand what was going on. And he's at the end of it, his conclusion was, and this is so beautiful, his conclusion, this has to be a Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he experienced ecstasy. You know what he says, and later on, like it's so beautiful. Like you see the transformation. This is the sensitivity with which how Mahaprabhu transformed his heart. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya glorifies Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as it is impossible for a person like me to be converted. Impossible. Not just because I was a scholar, but my heart was so hard because of dry logic that only the Supreme Lord could have done this. Right? And he says the proof, so when we say Tara Sakshi Jagai Madai, right, like the mercy of Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says something very similar. He actually says, the fact that somebody like me can go through this transformation, because my heart is so hard. And then the next morning, the transformation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is one of the, it's like when nobody's read this, it's just like a victory cry, right? Like it's so, it's the joy that just, you see how like this person who was such a dry logician, right, then eats Mahaprasad in the morning. Without brushing his teeth. And then Mahaprabhu with a smile on his face. This is it's so beautiful. Right? The exchange. Mahaprabhu with a smile. What happened to you? It's like, how can you eat prasad before brushing teeth? And then, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya declares, honoring prasad is even greater. And then his brother-in-law, Gopinath Acharya, who always makes fun of him, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, constantly, he keeps saying, what happened to your logic? You've become a madman. He keeps telling him that. And reminding him of his old conditioning. You see, in this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya becomes this. And it was because of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that King Prataparudra gets Mahaprabhu's mercy. You see, like the trajectory, like Mahaprabhu's effect on Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, then, so a priest, right? And these are people who are like the kind of status they had and the reach that they had in society. Right? Mahaprabhu was very strategic, right, in his preaching mission. First was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, through the biggest logician that ever existed. He impacted the life of the king of Orissa. Right? And the facilities that were created post King Prataparudra experiencing Mahaprabhu's mercy through Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for devotees to visit and experience Krishna Bhakti was phenomenal. Right? And in the same way, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was transformed the way he was, the news reached Varanasi. And that was the effect of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's transformation. And you hear Prakashananda Saraswati, I heard that this man had, even Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a. So that is why, that was one of Prakashananda Saraswati's reasons for meeting Mahaprabhu, because he was like shocked at how a logician like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya could fall prey to a madman. He was intrigued. Right, so the ripple effect of that sensitive outreach work, Mahaprabhu could have smashed Sarvabhauma, you impersonalist. I never once. So sensitive. So sensitive. And yet, uncompromising. Right? So to walk that delicate balance requires the experience of truth on multiple levels. And to be able to reconcile them on a much deeper place in a way that is pleasing to Krishna. So deep. Any other pastime comes to your mind? Yes?
Passing of Haridas Thakur and how Mahaprabhu behaves through that whole experience. He really understands his heart, what he desires, at the time of death. He's facilitates his desire to be completely, just gazing at the face of Mahaprabhu. And does he put his feet on his chest? Yeah, that's amazing. And then he, carrying his body and performing the final rites, and then collecting from the different merchants to make the feast, like just the personal care of attention to details of all the arrangements. It's just incredibly personal and loving.
When Mahaprabhu goes out with his sword, he goes out begging for the feast. It's like when you read that, it's just so beautiful. And then Sravanam Goswami tells him, please go home, we'll take care of this. Such a beautiful pastime. It reminds me of something. This is the inheritance of Mahaprabhu's heart. We'll talk a little bit about that. When Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj passed away, his final desire was that his body be dragged through the streets of Navadvip. And so there was this big debate that ensued. That was his final desire. So we should drag his body. Saraswati Thakur's response, that was no. So you may actually ask the question, well, didn't he fulfill his Guru's desire? And it takes a great deal of sensitivity to understand how the Guru may desire that, but the disciple has to treat the so the disciple cannot necessarily fulfill that very instruction, because the heart of the Guru is like, I'm just Krishna's devotee, this is what I deserve. But the way Saraswati Thakur said, my Guru's body deserves to be carried like how Mahaprabhu carried the body of Haridas Thakur. That's beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you. And so when you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is just, we're just dipping our toes in here. Like each chapter you open the Chaitanya Charitamrita is full of these kinds of sensitivities. And even correction. This is the other thing when you're talking about how, when you see somebody's essence, bhakti, right, there are so many imperfections. But even those imperfections, the way they are dealt with, the way Mahaprabhu corrects, is also done with sensitivity. How Krishna does. Mahaprabhu, he leaves Mahaprabhu's association. Right? And Mahaprabhu doesn't speak a word. He rescues him from the Bhattaharis and allows him to travel with him for the rest of his trip. doesn't dismiss him. And finally, when he comes to Puri, he says, now I know. Why? It's because in Puri there were a whole bunch of devotees who could then take care of him. Even when Mahaprabhu actually then said, okay, leave. Right? So the correction was also done. It was strong, but with the recognition that with the correction also needs, correction without care never works. I see when you deeply study how Prabhupada corrected also, there was always sensitivity and care, but strength. And that takes a very deep heart to be able to do that. Yes.
You mentioned Prabhupada, can I share something?
Yes, please.
So, Shamsundar Prabhu, I hope I'm getting this right, but Shamsundar Prabhu,
So that people in the back can hear.
Shamsundar Prabhu once he said that Prabhupada knew that he was a sensitive person, so Prabhupada never chastised him heavily, and he said whereas the Vietnam devotees who returned from the Vietnam War, Prabhupada would be very heavy with them. So Shamsundar Prabhu just made that distinction. Prabhupada knew how I was, and he worked with me that way. And the other could be more stricter.
Yeah. It's recognizing how somebody can take correction. There's this episode in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Shivananda Sen, so Shivananda Sen is the person who takes care of all the yatras. He's the organizer. It's not an easy task. And so once he becomes a little late in taking care, he had waited in a toll booth to actually pay more for letting out, so he let all the devotees pass. And Lord Nityananda became hungry, and then he became hangry. And in that spirit, he actually cursed Shivananda Sen and said, may all his three sons die. It was pretty heavy, it was pretty intense. And so when Shivananda Sen comes back, his wife starts to cry naturally. And when Shivananda Sen comes back, he falls at the feet of Nityananda Prabhu and begs forgiveness. But his nephew, Shivananda Sen's nephew, Srikanta Sen, he's hurt by this. And so he decides to leave the party and just travel by himself. He's very painful, comes very pain in his heart. And then he comes to see Mahaprabhu in Puri. And when he offers obeisances, he doesn't take off his upper cloth. The etiquette there was when you offer obeisances to a sannyasi, you take off your upper cloth. And Mahaprabhu's personal servant Govinda is about to correct him. Then Mahaprabhu stops and says, right now he's sensitive. Doesn't correct him at that point in time. And what is so beautiful is that just by seeing Mahaprabhu, Srikanta Sen's heart becomes pacified. You see how sensitive this is. Understanding somebody's heart, where somebody's coming from. And that requires a very deep level of perception. And when we don't choose to go there, this is the when we recite the prayers, Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Radhi Swapadamikam. The glorification of Rupa Goswami is one who understood the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? And the Goswamis, the wealth that the Goswamis were given, and if you study their lives, it's exactly the same thing. So sensitive. So sensitive. Right? And they inherited Mahaprabhu's heart. That was what was given to them. They inherited Mahaprabhu's heart. And for us, as devotees, if we have to truly, this is the when we are working within the gamut of an institution, as we try to expand Krishna consciousness, what we have to really work hard on, and it's not easy. Because sensitivity requires for us to keep our hearts open even when we go through pain and suffering. But that is what is required for us to experience Krishna Bhakti, the depth of Krishna consciousness at the end. Because when we shut down our hearts, we rob ourselves of the opportunity of experiencing Krishna consciousness very deeply. To actually inherit the wealth of Mahaprabhu's heart requires for us to constantly, intentionally develop sensitivity. There is no option. It takes work. So, I would like to conclude by saying that sensitivity is a gift. As I was reciting about Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam, if we do have the desire to follow in the footsteps of the Goswamis, then it requires for us to become sensitive like that. That is the price for the inheritance of Mahaprabhu's heart. And that takes hard work. It takes grappling with very complex, difficult circumstances. It takes for us to take shelter of devotees, and this is one thing that I've seen consistently in my life, that devotees who have actually taken very deep, not just study, but like when they have relished the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And numerous examples come to mind. When they deeply relish, you will see that they are some of the most sensitive Vaishnavas you'll ever meet. Because they have inherited Mahaprabhu's heart. So if you're, in management, in preaching, the heart tends to become hard. And the material world also works in a way that makes the heart desensitized. And our work is to actually keep our hearts open. So one of the ways to do that is to stay in touch with the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is a plug for the CC. This is the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that really softens the heart. Mahaprabhu's Leela is Gambhir. And when we take our time to constantly, every day, bathe our consciousness in that Gambhir, in that heart of Mahaprabhu, you'll see our hearts will. There is no way our hearts will just shut down. Because Mahaprabhu's pastimes are so beautiful, so sensitive. So tomorrow, as we invite Mahaprabhu to descend into our own hearts, let's really meditate on these beautiful, sensitive pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And really take them as a wealth. Kaviraj Goswami says, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jai Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Shrotagan, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jnanra Pranadhan. So he says, glorifies the listeners of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he says that I'm glorifying them because they have made the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the wealth of their life. So my request is, let's really earnestly, for Prabhupada has taken so much pain to translate, give us this work. Really, like making the Chaitanya Charitamrita a part of our daily life, our daily existence. And I can tell you 100%, our hearts will start to become sensitive, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 6 Goswamis. Experience a deeper level of bhakti. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai. Rasanath Prabhu ki
Jai.
Now we'll have arti. So if everyone can move these mats to the side and come forward so we can sing and dance together for Mahaprabhu's pleasure. Janavi will lead us in kirtan.
Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Hare Krishna,
Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnu Baba Paramahamsa Parabhajika Astotra Sota Shri Maharaj Divine Grace Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Hadras Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Prem Purushottam Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Nashrama Kun Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan ki jai. Mayapur Navadip Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Kali Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yajna ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the divine lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Hare Krishna, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to Vrindavan for leading us in a wonderful bhajan, and Janavi and Doyal for leading us in kirtan, and Rasanath for such a deep. So this happens every Sunday. Please come back again and again and again and make this your weekly program here at Bhakti Center. And please join us tomorrow. Tomorrow is the actual day of bringing the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. And we're having a festival tomorrow evening from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Jagannath Priya Prabhu, where did he go? He was here. He will be giving a talk tomorrow evening. We'll have kirtan and a talk by him, and also an abhishek, and of course a feast. So please come, and if you're not already signed up to our temple newsletter, please do so to get regular updates, one weekly email of the happenings here at Bhakti Center for our devotee community. You can sign up for that by going to bhakticenter.org and scrolling down to the bottom and clicking on join our temple newsletter. And if you'd like to be added to the temple WhatsApp, which is just kind of the exact same thing that's on the newsletter, but like one daily post, you can see me and I can add you to that. If you're interested in volunteering here at Bhakti Center, you can see me or Dayal Gauranga after the program. And we also have a beautiful home program initiative here at Bhakti Center, where we want to actually get 100% of our core community in a meaningful sangha where they can develop deep friendships with each other, support each other, and discuss shastras together.
So if you're interested in either hosting a home program at your home or joining a home program, you can also see me after the program. And that's all the announcements that I have for now. Please come back tomorrow and next Sunday. Hare Krishna. Oh, and please stay. We have a prasadam lunch served for you all in the back. Please take prasadam in the back. And if you'd like to give a donation to support us, you can. We have a donation bowl there. And also if you're interested in becoming part of our team to help run the program with Bhagavat Shravanam, you can come see me or the devotees who are serving prasadam and also help us clean up afterwards. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Govinda, 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 Gopala. Hari Gopinala, Nanda Dulala. Hari Gopinala, Nanda Dulala. Govinda, Govinda, Gopala. Govinda, Govinda, Bhagavan ki Hare Krishna.